Now recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Roundtable Report. I'm Shaylei,
I'm Jazzy.
and today we have two very special guests with us to talk about heroic rating. We have Kaz, who is the team lead for Harbinger, and Zas, who is the team lead for Acheron. How you doing, guys?
I think you pronounced that wrong. According to my notes, is Cosmoso.
The more S's and the more O's, the more powerful I become.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Welcome,
And
guys.
howdy, all. It's Zos.
So, our topic today is going to be heroic rating in the War Within. So, how progressed are the teams? I know the answer to that one, Kaz, but I'm going to let you answer.
Yeah, so Harbinger's currently 7 of 8 heroic, and we are working on phase 2 and phase 3 of Queen. So we're almost done,
Almost there.
but it's been pretty good so far.
And
about you,
Zos, how's
Zos?
Acheron doing?
Acheron has completed the raid. We finished the previous raid lockout. And so we're about to kill a second time. We had someone miss the progression kill. So we're all getting together. Actually, in about 3 hours from this recording, we hope to be killing it again.
Okay.
So what he's telling us is we've only got 3 hours.
Right. That's what I heard. Acheron is a little different than other teams. You only get your AOTC, once or twice, and then you just call it and go back to your retirement home status?
Pretty much. So the general plan is to kill the final boss twice. That way, the entire raid has a chance. If you miss 1 week, you can get it the next week. And then the third week, we do the meta achievement for the mount, and then we go on break until new content comes out.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. We still have to do that too, Kaz.
Yeah, that's not super unsimilar to what Harbinger does. We always kill the end boss twice and then get the meta achievement. The difference is that we don't go into retirement. We just keep raiding. Either we'll keep clearing heroic, we'll start working on alts, or so. But our game plan pretty much is the exact same.
Yeah, kill heroic a few times and get your achievements, and then just either chill or have fun. I like it.
We usually have fun.
It's
Usually.
drastically
We
different from what I
try
do.
to. We try to have fun. Sometimes we want to shoot ourselves in the foot in the process, but we still have fun.
I mean, you can make that fun.
So do we want to go boss by boss, or do we want to just talk about the stuff that annoys us?
Yes, all of the above. Yeah, let's start with a good note because I feel like we might need that today. What's y'all's favorite boss in the new raid in Nerobar Palace?
I have 2. I love the Nexus Princess,
It's a good one.
and hot take, I actually love Brood Mother or Brood Tender
You
or
are a
whatever.
brood twister. You're
But I
allowed to be wrong.
want to talk about that fight in extreme detail. So if we go boss by boss, then like when we get to that boss, I have notes.
Well, before we go boss by boss, Zos, what's your favorite boss?
I kind of fall in line with Kaz. I really like Princess, but I like Queen. I think it's a really well designed final boss.
I would agree with you there.
There's so much going on in that fight.
There is, but it's not as bad. I don't
I
think.
like that there's a lot of stuff going on. I think that's perfect for an end boss. I have my own gripes with Queen, but I agree. I think Queen is a very good final boss.
I think the complexity and damage ramp kind of came out of nowhere.
It's significantly harder than anything that came before it.
There's one change that they made a few weeks back that made the queen fight okay to good. And that was when they fixed it so that if somebody died, I'm talking about P1, if somebody dies, you're just not instantly having to call it because the stacks from the soak thing recalculate every time to adjust for the number of people that are alive, not the number of people in your raid. So previously, if you had somebody die, somebody would get up to 3 to 4 stacks, even if everybody's soaked. That's no longer the case.
Yeah,
kinda
and
like
it
the
should
guy
have been
that's
that
the
way from the beginning.
It should have been.
Yes, it should have. I kinda like the guy that's the continuation from Dawnbreaker. I don't even remember what the heck its name is, but I like that fight. I don't know
Rashinon?
why.
I like that
Yes.
fight on Heroic. I do not like that fight on Mythic.
But we're not talking about Mythic.
We're not
I
talking
know,
about
but
Mythic. We're talking about Heroic here, Jazzy.
you can hear the first part of the sentence, right?
So once again, I have opinions on that boss as well.
All right,
I'm
well,
very opinionated about this raid. I think that it's a very good raid, but
I agree.
there are definitely some things about it that I wish were handled a little differently. Which
Sure.
if we go, which we'll get to.
All right.
Oh
Well,
god, don't encourage him.
well, before we do the whole boss by boss, let's talk about the worst bosses. And why is it Cork?
Court is bad, yeah.
I think Court could be good. There's one moment in Court that I cannot tolerate, and I would love to know what Blizzard's plan was. Like, how did they expect people to do that without add-ons, and without voice comms? Because
I
I
like
just believe
breaking the
every fight
thing.
should be able to be done without those. We use
On
them to make it
heroic, I agree.
easier.
Yeah, on
Um,
Heroic I would agree. But
sure.
are you referring to the dispels?
No.
No, actually, that's not even bad. It's coming into phase 3 where you have the charge, and the only way to break is for people who are tied to randomly not break.
Mhm.
I agree.
But you have to break so quickly because the damage is so strong.
It hurts.
It does, and I think it's a lose-lose situation. You don't have enough time to coordinate it. You just have to have people react, which is fine. I like reaction mechanics. Um, but it just doesn't work for me. I don't like the way the timing of it falls out. I don't like the damage, like the crazy amount of damage that's going on at the same time. Because so often you see, two people do the mechanic correctly, right? Like they stay linked, and then they die before the charge happens because the damage is so strong.
I
That is a very, very interesting point, and is the exact reason why or the exact same thing that I have wrong with Brood Twister.
Mhm.
But it's specifically in Court, I completely agree with you. I think maybe they could have toned down the amount of damage that you take if you're tethered, because you're encouraged to break your tether so you stay alive, but you can't break your tether or you'll wipe. And so I agree, it's this weird catch 22 where we find ourselves rolling pretty much every healing and defensive cooldown we have, and then also screaming at each other in voice comms saying, don't break, these people break, you need to break. Like, as a general rule of thumb, our healers always break, which means people tied to the healers always break, and so we have to hope that like two of the DPS that are linked together find each other and communicate and have defensives and somehow get in the right position, and then also dodge the impaling spike overlap, because that mechanic also overlaps with an impaling spike.
I feel like, well, two things. I think fights should get more dangerous as they progress. That's fine. But I agree with the idea that the damage itself by being tethered is too much. Um, but on Blizzard's side, I can understand that they don't want people just holding on to these tethers forever. The simple
Mhm.
solution to that is just have it ramp
Why not?
damage. So you don't hold it forever, but you can hold it for a little bit. So you're encouraged to have it and keep it so that you can do the mechanic properly.
Yeah,
Um,
you can
yeah,
hold it until your raid finds a way to coordinate who's breaking,
right.
instead of just immediately dying. Not immediate, but the pull in does a lot of damage. The charge does a lot
Mm.
of damage. It's that mechanic is overlapped with a ring. It's also overlapped with a frontal, I think.
Yeah,
There's just and maybe it's spell queuing, right? Maybe I know Blizzard changed spell queuing on a few fights, and it made the fight significantly easier. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe they just need a way to like calm down the overlap itself. And maybe not each individual mechanic is fine, but because they all seem to overlap, now things are getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a lot. It's definitely a pretty substantial wall, even in heroic, for what I think it should be.
I don't think it's the worst fight. We're going back to the worst fight. I don't think it's the worst fight, but the charge boss number 3, that it just
Sickren.
that
Mhm.
boss
Sickren, yeah.
doesn't do anything for me.
That is
It's a
a
little
underwhelming
too
fight.
The
it's a
charge
little too
boss.
similar to Nexus Princess, I think, both visually, thematically. I don't know. Both of them are kind of like run the marks out, and it's I don't know. Those two bosses, for some reason, live right next to each other in my brain, and one of them is significantly better than the other.
I feel like Sickren was intended to be like an initial gear check, and Kavez is meant to be the real gear check, but Sickren just doesn't live up to it.
The real gear check.
Yeah, Kaveza is decent. Like I agree, Kaveza is a really good fight. It's quick, it's hard to coordinate correctly, and the damage is there where it needs to be with the right amount of complication, and that's it. But Sickren is just meh.
It's just meh.
It may or may also be tainted by the fact he drops a neck that everybody and their freaking grandmother want, and I hate being on loot council, but that's a different story.
I mean, or you could just be like me and roll horrible every single time.
Yeah, you don't have to worry
Sure.
about gear if you never get it anyway.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Look, last expansion, most of my gear came out of my vault.
This
Like,
expansion, all of my gear has come out of my vault, so
I mean,
or close to it anyway. So okay, I was memeing a bit on why Court was the worst one. What do we think is the worst one in there, or do you agree that it is Court?
I don't think any of them have bad mechanics to the point that I just truly can't stand the fight. But I would say that my least favorite to do are the third boss because it bores me, and then actually Brood Twister because even though I said it was one of my favorites, it is also my single least favorite.
You're complicated today.
I know, that's
compulsive
why I want to talk about it.
indecision.
No, we have to talk about it because like we can talk about it right now or we can go boss by boss and talk about it when we get to it. But I have a lot of opinions about that fight, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but I just believe that that fight is fantastic except for one huge major issue, and I want to rant about it.
Of course you do.
Okay. Zos is Court your least favorite fight, or are we gonna go into Brood Twister here?
Least favorite, weird. I missed progression on our team on Brood Twister, so I have a different relationship with it.
How dare
Um,
you?
Wow.
I know. Um, you know, Bloodbound is just a boring fight for me, and so I dislike it for that. Like, I'd rather do Olgrax, um, and I just don't like boring fights. Um,
It's fair.
so it just doesn't. I'm like, can we just get through it, please? And then my least favorite trash in the tier follows it. So that's just a bad block of time for me during raid. So just Bloodbound and the trash that follows is I am displeased.
Yeah, the trash that follows Bloodbound is pretty meh.
So when you take the flight points, it shifts you out of druid forms.
No, problems I don't have.
Right?
Um,
Seriously.
and it's just obnoxious. Um, I just don't like that trash. Just don't like it.
So
But anyway,
so
yeah.
really your issue is that you picked wrong at the select character creation screen. Is that what I'm hearing?
Come on, Zos, get with it.
Never
I mean,
masterclass.
there's only one right answer, and that's gnome and monk. I don't under. Is there? Never mind. Nobody agrees with me.
God, Jazzy. I don't know about you sometimes.
Only sometimes. It's
I don't know about
improving.
you all. I don't know about you all the time, but that's neither here nor there. Hi. What? Did somebody say something?
No. Only those other voices in your head.
Wait, they're talking to each other
I mean, it's better than mine. They talk in Spanish sometimes. It's weird.
now? We'll get Darin to translate for you.
Thanks. All right. Yeah, I guess let's go boss by boss and say what's good and what's bad and what's boring and why we like or dislike them. I guess we can take it in order and just blaze through the first ones because they're all kind of unremarkable to some degree. But Olgrax,
I think
first
Ulgrax is
boss.
a good first boss. I
Yeah.
like that it requires the tiniest bit of coordination when it comes to things like how you like what webs you clear with the acid and making sure you stack up to split the charge. Um, which I think are great mechanics for a first boss, right? I think literally anybody could go in there and recognize with a little bit of reading, read the dungeon journal, but anyone can go in there and recognize, okay, I am supposed to stand here, I'm not supposed to stand here.
What's this reading thing you speak of?
The thing I don't like about Ulgrax is the transition phase. I didn't like that. I didn't like this about the first boss of the Emerald Dream last year or last tier either. I hate it when bosses just go straight up immune.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
slows the pacing of the fight way down.
It's also with Olgrax counterintuitive because you have DPS that don't understand that they don't need to run to the things that have health bars, and waiting for them to come to you is significantly better.
I think that's the bit for me that I don't like about that fight is doing the proper strategic thing. It is boring.
Yep.
Pew pew.
And that's just I don't know. I just don't think that's fun. I like the
Especially
whole
on the
having
first
to
boss.
feed the like that's really cool. Like I like the whole idea behind it. I think the fight goes on too long. I think that phase is too long. I think it takes too long to deal with the ads. And maybe the goal was right, like is you run back and forth across the room, which is just even worse. So you're going to spend the time one place or the other. But I feel like it just breaks the flow of the fight, and it breaks any momentum in the raid. You're just like, okay, everyone sit on your thumbs now. Literally shift steps to avoid getting run over.
Yeah.
And actually, we'll talk about that again in my thoughts on Princess. But there's at least pretend chaos there, and there's not. But it's a good opening boss. Like the thing we have to remember, I think, is this is the first boss of the expansion. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be complicated. It should be accessible. But it's just boring.
I
I agree. I feel
I
like the
agree.
one minor fix that would solve a lot of these issues, well, two, make the charge portion significantly fewer. Like
Mhm.
have instead of 6 charges, only 3 because
Yep.
why? And then have him come up where the ads are. That's it.
Yep. Yep. So
Yes.
collapse to the ads and then force the run out for him to spawn and then collapse back in. So that gives you a collapse, a spread, a collapse mechanic, which is always good. Like intentional movement. Um, and then I think it makes sense thematically because he's going to try to eat the things. So he's going to spawn on them, not as
Yep.
far away from them as possible. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Zos, are you tanking? Or are you boomy?
Yeah. So I'm DPSing in raid.
Okay.
And this was so I'll just go ahead and throw this out. This was probably my worst performance tier uh, as a DPS. I have been essentially a tank now for a couple expansions and only DPS and raid. So 3 hours a week I DPS and that's it. The rest of the week I'm a tank. So
Good pew pew.
um, it's been a weird feeling, and the raid leader tax was super high on me this tier, so I don't know what that says about me. But so performance wise, as a raw DPS player, I don't think I performed super well this tier, and thankfully, I know the raid leader, so I didn't go anywhere.
Well, I was gonna ask about the tank mechanic, specifically on Olgarax,
Mhm.
you're not getting healed anymore for some amount of time. I did not find that challenging in the slightest.
Mm-mm. No, completely irrelevant because there's no ancillary damage going out as long as the tank swap happens. That's it.
Even when the tank swap doesn't happen,
Yeah, I've
uh,
solo tanked this. It's fine. Like,
yeah. So
I
okay,
think as an introduction, though, I think
no,
that
it's a
a lot
yeah,
of
mhm,
a lot of the tanks are set as self-sustaining, right? Especially if you've done a few dungeons or maybe a delve or two, and you realize like, oh, I can keep myself alive. I'm gonna press Death Strike. I'm gonna press Word of Glory. I'm gonna press, whatever your class's self heal button is. And then you get into raid and suddenly you can't do that. Well, now you have to explore a new part of your spells, of your toolkit. Maybe I need to press that defensive instead of the heal. Maybe I need to, and I'm not saying it's complicated and it might not be challenging, but I see where they're coming from. It seems like they wanted tanks to explore the entirety of their toolkit and not just well, this is the button that puts me at full health.
mhm,
yeah, because it won't matter anymore. And even when I was earlier in the tier, I had to physically stop myself from hitting my heal when I was above, I was at half health. I'm okay, I'm just gonna hit my heal. No, it won't work right now. Don't do that, Jazzy. I
mhm,
talk to myself, but whatever. Um, and it's not hard for me, but it is a good primer. It is a first boss. I kind of hold the gold standard of first bosses being Shriekwing, because that's
I
a
like
really
that
good
fight.
fight, especially for a first boss.
It's another
Um,
boss that goes immune. What is Blizzard's fascination with bosses that can't be damaged?
they want to see if you have any level of coordination.
What's this
I
coordination
also
you
think
speak
that
of?
not being able to be healed is not inherently as punishing. There are some tank swaps that if you don't swap at the right time, you literally die. And
Yeah.
I think maybe for a first boss, they didn't want that. So instead, they have this, oh, I'm at half health. I hope the other tank taunts. They're not taunting. They're not taunting. Now I'm at a quarter health. They're not taunting. They're not right? It gives the other tank time to react. It gives a little bit of leniency on the tank swap itself. Compared to, I don't know if there are any bosses this tier, but there was a boss last tier, the Forge Master, right? Where the first slam was a billion fire damage, and then a billion nature damage, and then a billion fire damage. And if you took the wrong one, you just immediately died. And I don't think maybe that they were looking for something like that for the first boss.
Yeah, I don't think so. I
mhm.
I agree that the first boss should be something that's pretty straightforward, not terribly punishing, but should set the tone, I guess. So I don't know. I was just more curious if those had any, because I've only seen it from the monk point of view,
Mhm.
and that's just
From a
laughable to me.
bear, it was just a non-issue,
Yeah. Okay.
and I don't think our tanks had an issue either. We ran Monk DK for the first part of the expansion. Um, it was just it was a non-issue.
Well, let's go on to what Zoe's called the most boring boss. Bloodbound.
So I play a Destruction Warlock, and I would say opposite of Zos, this is probably my highest performing raid tier in a very long time. I'm very feeling myself this tier. And as a Destruction Warlock, I love the second boss because if I get sent under with my cooldowns running, I can pad, pad, pad.
I
Shocker,
love
a
it. I love
DPS
it.
loves to pad. I never would have guessed.
No, it's kind of silly if I can get Havoc. Like if I can get Havoc during the hero or Bloodlust and my Infernal's out and I've got a demon or two spawning, like Havoc is a disgustingly broken spell. So I like the boss, but I only like the boss if I get to go under first. If the other group gets targeted first, then you're right, that fight gets a
It
little.
makes you sad.
The thing I like about that fight though is that is not a fight that overstays its welcome. That boss does not have a very big health pool. And even when you go under to kill the ads, at least you can still target and kill the boss, which I think is very good design because if you couldn't if you truly phased out and couldn't fight the boss while you were fighting the ads, which they could have done, especially as a second boss, they could have said, "Okay, your job is to kill the ads, you have to kill the ads." But they chose not to, and I like that because we now that we're overgeared, we kill the ads so quickly that if you couldn't fight the boss while you were down there,
It would be
oh my god, that
boring.
fight would be terrible.
Yeah, it would be so bad.
Why look, you know what? Because why can't I cleave off the boss?
I agree. No, and so if anything, I think Blizzard did a good job with that, where they were like, well, you can still fight the boss,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
liked the
I
fight. There was good coordination. There is a coordination challenge. It's easy to overcome. I don't think it's particularly a bad fight. I think it's boring. I think heroic is a lot better than normal with the introduction of the beams. That takes me back to Ruby Sanctum days. Um, I
I
don't I
like
don't
that.
hate a beam mechanic. I think it's fine. Um, it gave the tank something to do because there isn't
Yeah.
otherwise. So, um, you know,
If there wasn't
it's a
beams
fight.
on that fight, I would have nothing to do.
Yeah.
And don't say taunting the one ad because taunting one ad, dear God, just
Come on, Jazzy, get with it. You're
It's
supposed to
a
taunt
good
that one ad. Always
it's a
taunt
good
that one
second
ad.
it's a good second boss, right? It's
Yeah.
non-threatening, it doesn't overstay its welcome, it introduces a little bit of coordination. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing offensive about it.
I think the damage from not standing on dry ground is a bit more punishing than it should be. But otherwise, I mean, you can just jump, so
I wish the edge of the platform or the edge of the explosion was a little more defined. The kind of the pulsing edge, I think is just a telegraphing problem. I get it; it looks cool, but I think players deserve to know what's safe and what's not safe. So
I wish
I just like to see a clearer ring.
What if the pools put a heal absorb on you? Like a big one, but maybe instead of killing you for not for, being in the wrong spot, maybe it just put a heal absorb on you so that you still lived but you were still in danger. Something that was threatening and needed to be reacted to, but didn't just like immediately kill you after 2 ticks.
Mhm.
yeah, something like that. I don't know. I think they just could have toned it down slightly because it's clear you're not supposed to stand in the goo. Shocker. But I don't know. I just when my health starts ticking like for tens of percent at a time, okay. I don't know how you DPS lived.
We jump.
Yeah, you just jump.
I've got a space bar on my keyboard.
I hear jumping is a DPS loss unless you're a fire mage and combust.
I mean, it's a DPS loss for me.
I mean,
So
anytime WoW tries to become a platformer, it's rough, but I do appreciate there was at least something to do there.
I remember the timeless isle jumping puzzles, and those were a lot of fun and frustrating as heck.
That's
Yes.
actually a really interesting point that I think we can talk about for the raid as a whole is that there is a lot of movement in this raid.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
This is not a I mean this raid's not very friendly to DPS that don't have mobility options. And we saw it in the race to world first. As a warlock I was paying particularly close attention to the warlocks and everyone was touting destruction as the worst spec. it's the one that was outputting the least amount of damage, but it was the one that was being represented the most in all these races, and it's because it might have been the worst damage output on a training dummy, but it was the highest damage output as soon as you had to start pressing buttons on your keyboard, as soon as those direction, arrow pads needed to be pressed suddenly. And I think that that's really interesting that it there's a lot of it's really punishing though. I mean, certain classes shouldn't be wholly excluded because they don't have the movement options.
Yeah, I have a much larger and definitely not for this podcast rant on Sims and only being patchwork, and it bothers the ever living crap out of me, and I will refuse and refute anybody who uses those. Always light movement or heavy movement. Don't
Run
give me a
around.
sim with
Run
patchwork
around. Run
because
around.
that is not even close to accurate
You gotta
for
run
anything.
around.
As a heroic raid leader, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'll die on this hill. I think that the person behind the keyboard is much more important than the spec that they're playing.
Agreed.
And so if somebody I do not like demonology. If demonology is the best warlock spec, I will not play the best warlock spec. And I think that that's true for 90% of heroic raiders, because if you're enjoying and engaged in the tune that's in front of you, you're going to perform better than if you don't enjoy it, but but you feel like you have to play it because it's the best.
Yep. Chasing that flavor of the month is not a good thing. In general, I'm gonna get my team yelling at me right now.
I think for heroic, my team can yell at me all they want. For
Yeah.
heroic, anytime someone asks me, should I play this class or this class? My answer is
play
not, well, this
play
one's
what you want.
better. Yeah, my answer is, well, which one do you enjoy more? And if they're like, well,
Yep.
I'm going to play this one because it's better, it's like, okay, well, that's a choice you're making. But in 3 months, when you're bored out of your mind or hate what you're doing and you ask to switch specs again, I'm going to throw the biggest I told you so in your face.
How long did it take me to decide what main I was gonna do this X-Pack?
Yeah, but you're really bad at this, Shay. Like, honestly, you tell me all the time, priest is bad right now, shaman's bad right now, this is bad right now, this is bad right now. And my answer to you
Fair.
is, I don't care.
Play what
What do
you want.
you want to play? And you're always like, well, I want to play what's best. And it's like, well, I don't care what's best because you're going to perform, XYZ regardless. So don't play what you think is the best. Play the one that's the most engaging. Play the one that's going to keep you occupied, right? We have so many people, not as much anymore, but we have so many people join the team and then burn out 3 months later. And it's I don't know, Zos. Well, you guys are a retirement team, but like I don't know. I just feel like that's if it's not mythic, maybe people don't take it as seriously, and so
I
they.
have a group of people who very much like chasing the theoretical max, and so they will swap characters based on you know based on the Sims. So they want to know what they can do the theoretical max on, and then see how close they can come to that theoretical max. So they're not tied to any one class or any one role even. They just want to try to push as much as possible. Um, and once I started to understand, like, that's what gave them happy in the game, then it made more sense to me. Because I come at it from a very RPG standpoint. So I love my characters. His backstory has the whole thing. Like, I've been playing, Zos was the first character I created in WoW, and so I've been playing this for 17 years. Um,
Only 17 years?
yeah, and
The shade.
the people who change multiple times in a season, even, I have a better understanding now. I used to think they were just absolutely ridiculous, but I've come to learn that, like, that's what they like, is pushing the meter. Um, and it's not really in relation to everyone else. It's in relation to the sim. They want to get as close to perfection as possible, and you got to love that. And I think heroic gives us an opportunity for them to do that more frequently, because it doesn't take as long to get caught up in gear. It doesn't take as long to have an equivalent tune. Um, if you're mythic geared and going through that race, it's difficult to change mid-course unless you have been, like, co-gearing something along with you.
I'm going to
It's not
take what
fun.
you said and agree with you while also spinning it to match my own narrative. Check this
I like
out.
it.
Oh.
Those people that you described as chasing the best and trying to match the Sims and constantly switching characters, you said that they're doing it because that's what they enjoy and that's what they like. And I would argue that that just validates what I said, which is that it's a lot more about the player behind the keyboard than the
Yep,
tune itself. And
absolutely.
so when I have people do it, it's I have no interest in playing this class, but Icy Veins said it was the best. And then they get on that class, they start gray parsing, they get frustrated, they
Right,
burn
yep,
out, and they quit. Right. So
absolutely.
I very much agree with you, but for the exact like opposite reason. Whereas if that's what your raiders enjoy, then that's amazing. But that's not what my raiders are doing, or at least in my
Mhm.
experience, that's not what these people are doing. So once again, it just comes back to the person behind the keyboard is going to perform better than the tune
Mhm.
sitting in game.
Oh, I think so. Um, I think one of the things with Akron in particular, um, the majority of the team are retired CE raiders, and so they there is something to miss that, that difficulty level and that precision that's required to play at that level. So the way they can emulate that, is almost by starting over midway, and then going through content under geared.
I
So you
always come
you
back to
you
the shaman.
yeah, so you feel that the difficulty in an artificial way because you're lower eye level than the game had planned for.
Yeah, that sounds fun, and I definitely respect that.
I don't do it. I mean, I'm glad they do, but I don't.
Sauce is like, they can do whatever the heck they wanna do, as
Yeah,
long as it doesn't
sounds
involve
terrible.
me.
Um, I'm
I
glad they
hate
enjoy it,
rerolling.
but oof.
Uh,
All right.
Real quick, Zoss, you mentioned that your character has a backstory and all that fun stuff. I always ask this question: what's Zoss the character's favorite ice cream?
Mm. I haven't given this much thought. It would be something, something in the realm of maybe a cookies and cream type thing. Not
Maybe.
super sweet, but like an Oreo Blizzard
Yummy.
type thing. A little
Okay.
crunchy, a little gritty, but
What about
but
like a
not
Rocky
not super
Road type of
offensive.
situation,
No,
or
that's a little fancy.
okay, all right, I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah, not that bougie.
Okay,
Just like basically just the Oreos got crumpled up, in the last fight, and so he just dumps them in the ice cream. Like it's not fancy.
I approve. I love it.
Somebody saddled a pack of Oreos.
It's all right. We still got this. Here's my
I
ice cream.
mean,
Let's do this.
it's the big bear butt. Things happen.
Bear
Kind of
butt.
person that would have ice cream on tap. All right.
Amazing.
Now that
Ugh.
we've detoured a little bit, let's bring it back to the lovely boss that we've briefly touched on. We're only on boss number 3, y'all. Sikran, Chargy Boy.
I like that it
Charger boy.
requires more coordination than the first two bosses. I think that it bridges the gap into actual like real live coordinated raiding a little better, but
Mm.
I think that it's just inherently weaker themed and a little bit boring for me. And I that's because I can't help but compare it to Princess. Um,
I think that's a pretty fair comparison, though.
but I think that it's fine for what it is. It's fine for where it is. It's meant to be the patchwork DPS check, and I think it does that. I especially like. Correct me if I'm wrong. The puddles don't ever despawn, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, I like that, right? Because it means that you can survive as long as humanly possible, but eventually you're gonna just straight up die. And I like that for these
Yeah.
kinds of like patchwork. Now maybe the damage check could be a little tighter. I don't know. I don't think we ever got to the point where we were running out of space.
We didn't.
It bores me, and like I said, it's hard for me not to compare it to a significantly better fight. But I think for what it is and where it is, it's fine. Yeah, it's good.
I like that it lets you build a thing that you then have to destroy, and it punishes you for putting it poorly, but it lets you, it's a room denial fight that you control, and I like that. I pug it some, and I've seen pug groups make it way too complicated. You can do it as simply as the boss never leaves the middle of the room, and
That's how we do it.
everyone just kind of clocks around the room. But then some people, move the boss off to the side to maximize melee uptime and do all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, it's like a 1 3/4, maybe 1.5 second time that the boss isn't standing in the middle of the room, but okay, sure, you do you. And so I like that that's available. If you want to just really blast that boss, you can. You can set yourself up so you have pure 100% uptime, and that's cool. Or you can kind of sit back and chill and just do the fight. So I like that. It's early on. It's simple. It gives you some decent loot to set you up for the rest of the tier. It's fine.
It's just fine.
It's fine. This is fine. Everything is fine.
We actually had a little bit of an issue with when the ads get destroyed, they put the stacking dot on the whole raid.
Mhm.
That only lasts for a few seconds. Our issue was in heroic, it wasn't punishing or obvious enough. So our raiders on
Mm.
mythic decided that it still wasn't going to be a problem, and it was. So yeah, that took a little bit of learning. So what do you think about the difference, not from a heroic to mythic standpoint, but from a normal to heroic? Is there enough of a difference? Are those changes that they made good? Does it scale well or poorly?
So the change, correct me if I'm wrong, is that anybody hit by the charge creates an ad, not
Correct.
just the people targeted.
Correct.
Yeah, that's it.
And
It's
the
the only
puddles
change.
are permanent. On normal, they disappear.
Oh,
Oh,
do they?
okay.
Oh,
Well,
I
all
didn't
right.
even
Well,
know
I've
that.
already talked about the puddles being permanent. I like that. I like room denial fights. Um, the charge hits everyone in its path was difficult for us initially because we did the park the boss in the center of the room strat. And so we found that we had, even now we sometimes do, have a melee or two get clipped. But I agree with what Zos said, which is that you can control it. And I'm going to add to what he said and say that you can even recover from mistakes. Because if your decimate placement is if the people targeted with decimate react fast enough, you can fix a bad charge placement, and that includes having one or two extra charge ads that you didn't necessarily plan for. Your healers might hate you, but you can still recover, and I really do like that about that fight. So I think the change from normal to heroic is good because it requires a little bit more coordination, and it can be very punishing if you do it wrong, but you also still have a chance to recover. And I think that having the ability to recover from a mistake is a very important part of a good heroic fight. Foreshadowing, foreshadowing, foreshadowing.
I have no idea what you're foreshadowing there, but I'm gonna choose to ignore it. um, yeah,
Don't encourage him.
I, I extremely, even at a mythic level, I have said this to my team as well. I despise fights that have binary pass fail mechanics. I am fine if it makes it harder if we did poorly. That is absolutely okay, but a fight should be recoverable to some degree, always. Doesn't mean you're going to recover, just means that it's recoverable.
A bull.
Able.
A bull.
All right. Yeah. So now we go on to the giant mosquito.
Giant
So Zos, I have a
mosquito.
question for you.
Tell me I'm
Sure.
wrong.
How big is Acheron?
So this tier we rated at 20. So we cut 10 players from last couple expansions. We had historically rated at 30. And several people just didn't want to return this time. And so we're like, well, you know what? Let's just cut it down. Like let's go small. It's much easier at 20 than it was at 30 last couple expansions. There's so much more room for activities.
So that
Um,
is the perfect point, and the reason why I asked, because
mhm.
I hate this fight. And I maybe should have mentioned it earlier when we were talking about our least favorite fights, but now that I've actually had time to like think about it and digest it, I'm torn because the boss sits in execute for half of its health as a warlock. I love that, but I hate this fight, and I hate this fight because there's nothing inherently wrong with the fight. But Harbinger raids at 30, and
Mhm.
there's no room on there's no room. There's no room on this fight, and it's
Yeah,
everything just feels very tight. It feels very claustrophobic. You're presented with this massive platform, but you can't actually use any of it. I mean, I do not have room on this fight to do anything. And maybe it's a skill diff, maybe I'm just bad, but I think that this fight needs to find a way to maybe not punish larger raids as heavily.
see,
Because
I
I would
don't think it
imagine that if a
does
group of 10 went in there, it'd be a lot easier than my group of 30.
because there's nothing here that forces a loose spread. Um,
The I mean,
The ad spawn does.
yeah, the ad
no, but
spawning,
the
the
people who
webs.
get the ads, they run out. If you get a web, you run out. Everyone else should be stacked in on top of each other, and you shouldn't have space problems. It sounds to me like people are just spreading too early and denying yourself room.
I would argue that the rando poison puddles that are just there and you have no control over should
Yeah,
just
it's
go
fair.
away.
Yeah,
They're
I'll give you that.
completely irrelevant and not necessary, and they just make running to the other end of the platform more hazardous than it needs to be.
I
Mhm,
feel like with the placement of the boss, you're already encouraged to be close to it.
mhm.
That to then add all of that extra webs and poison and gunk, and maybe it is a perceived lack of space, but I just feel like I never have room on that fight to do anything, and I find myself dying to being clipped by somebody else's mechanics way more than I find myself dying to the actual like mechanic itself.
Mhm.
People dumping stuff on your head.
And
Maybe it's
yeah,
just the reaction time of the raid though.
that's
Because
entirely
you're right,
possible.
you could just stay stacked up the whole time, but
No one
we
does. It is
yeah,
so
no one
difficult
does.
to make Raiders stack. Um,
We funny story this past week, and yes,
Uh-oh.
gloating a little bit, but because we're on court and on Mythic you spawn orbs that your other half has to soak, but you can only soak up to 3. If you soak 4, insta dead, it can't be res, don't even try, right? Our Raiders stack too well.
mhm.
Never said that before in my entire raiding career have I said that. No. It
They
was
stacked
killing people. They stacked
too
too
well.
well, and it was killing the other group. It was the funniest thing. We were cracking up in office. They're like, "Wait, we can't get them to stack ever, and now they choose to stack? What is this?"
So this is the fight for me that I started to get tired of the stack and pull mechanic.
Yep.
Um, so we have it from the beginning. We deal with it on Ulgrax. You almost deal with it on Cicrin. I mean, not really, but
As a
almost. But then
knockback, but
by
yeah.
the time you get to Russian on, I am over this mechanic, and it is done to death, and we're going to do it multiple times still before the raid is over. And there's always that one mechanic that they overdo, and I feel like this fight really tells us this is the one you're gonna get tired of.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. This boss thematically is a huge win
Oh
because
yeah.
you are finishing off a boss that you fought in a dungeon. It didn't heal between then and now, which I think story-wise just adds a lot of flavor. And I think that what the boss does is very interesting. I just I agree. I don't like the I don't know. I don't like the platform you fight the boss on, I guess. Which I guess if that's the only thing I have to say negatively about a boss, maybe the boss isn't that bad, right? But I really like the poison line mechanic. I think it's telegraphed very
Yeah.
well, and I think it's very easy to react to, but not necessarily easy as much as like I actually think it's fun. I think it's fun
Mhm.
to figure out who has it, what direction they need to run. I think you have plenty of time to do so. However, you don't have
Mhm.
an eternity. I think that mechanically, I think the boss is perfectly fine. I just wish that the platform was 10% bigger.
Yeah, the
There's
transition phases are weird to me. I mean, I like the idea. Okay, big bug moves somewhere else. Um, but it's just
Somewhere
okay.
else.
Let's run over here now. Try not to step in the goo. But I,
wait, you
if
try
you,
not to? I just rolled through it.
yeah, you
Okay.
have
That must
somebody
be nice.
roar at the beginning, and then somebody roar when that roar ends, and oh look, you're there. It just doesn't. I, you know, the interrupt midway is whatever. Like it's a completely ignored mechanic. No one, one person who's super into interrupting knows how that works. No one else does. They don't even know that there's something to interrupt. Um,
I think maybe I think back to Legion, to Antorus with the bridge boss, where the boss moved from one side of the bridge to the other,
mhm.
and then during the move
Stuff to do.
there
Lines, orbs, and
right lines,
yeah,
orbs, mines.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe something like that, where maybe he only moved once or twice. I guess he only does move once or twice anyway, but maybe he moved and the move itself wasn't the mechanic, but there was actually something worth caring about while you were moving. Not just poison on the floor, but actual like maybe stinging swarms or toxic line. Maybe oh my gosh, what if the toxic line mechanic happened in the during the transition, right? And
Oh,
so
that would be all
I mean,
kinds
who
of
knows, right? But like maybe
Mhm.
Blizzard could design it better than I could, right? I don't know. I just feel I agree. You roar twice and you're done with it. But it's also the only time I die, or not the only time, but it's like I'm so much as a warlock. I have to hurt myself to move faster, and there's already a bunch of other stuff that I have to worry about, and I do
Mhm.
kind of find myself dying in that transition a lot. Skill diff, I guess, but I don't know. I agree. It's pointless. It's annoying. It's
But I like the fight. The trash is interesting too. I like that there's a trash counter. Um, I don't think any more than maybe completely made up numbers. 30 people in the whole game understand how the ballista work or use them. Like
yeah. We've never
neat,
used it.
neat opportunity. It's trash, but and it teaches a mechanic that doesn't exist. I,
pew
if
pew.
we had to do that during the fight, that maybe would be interesting. Where you have to, someone pick up a barbed bolt to shoot the boss to bring it back down. I mean, we haven't done that in a while, so yeah,
That
that
would be
wouldn't be bad.
fun. Maybe
That would be
instead of
fun.
moving from one part of the platform to the other, he just literally flies away and you have to shoot him to bring him back.
Mhm. Or if the different
That'd be
places
interesting.
it flew changed what you do. I mean, you can kind of, if it goes in the the back corner, uh, run all the webs to the wall instead of like splitting left and right. But that's really the only change that happens depending on where the boss goes. It just again, it's boss 4. Um, the instance opens up after this. I just expected that to be more of a gatekeeper than it was.
I agree. I didn't necessarily want another Anduin, but
Oh, no.
after Anduin's impact on being a gatekeeper, I agree with you. I was expecting more of a gatekeeper.
Oh God! Sorry, we have a running joke on Empire. You know, Ando was supposed to be an end boss, right?
Yes,
Yeah, we know.
He should have been.
he was.
He was, yeah.
I mean,
Lord, I
how
hope
long
you listening.
Fight
how long did we spend on Anduin?
fight so good I named my son after it.
That's yeah, the fight, sure.
Yeah, definitely not the character, just specifically the
Just the
fight.
fight.
I was like, I don't
Oh,
really care about this Anduin guy, but after that fight, now I'm gonna name my son after him.
oh man. All right. Well, speaking of gatekeepers and wall bosses, yeah, that's the end of what the community deemed the easy bosses. They were all cleared relatively quickly, and then we get into the real meat of it. I'm assuming everybody went Brood Twister first, or
We
did
did.
somebody?
We did.
Okay,
We
Okay.
shouldn't have.
right.
Brood, um, Princess was much easier for us. Brood
Same.
was uh, our first slowdown.
Same.
It took us 10 pulls to kill Brood, and before that, uh, Horror took 3, and that's because we just didn't do the beam mechanic. Like, the first 2 times we thought we could cheese it. You can't. And, so Brood took a little bit.
Now you
Um
know.
So, okay, here we go. We've been foreshadowing this all night. Let me get on my high horse. Let me get on my soapbox. Here we go. Brood Twister Ovanax is the coolest mechanically designed fight. Asterisk. Obviously, it's not. However, like that fight is amazing. I love the fight. I love the web dispel mechanic. I love the burn phases that you get. I love that you get to choose which eggs you pop, which can accommodate your specific raid strategy. My tanks are cracked beyond belief, so we do as many big spiders as possible all at the same time because I don't have to worry about my tanks dying. Like I think that this fight is very, very good. I like the pacing of it. I like how you have to react to what's going on. I like that there's different eggs that you can choose to. Here's my problem with the fight, and here's the reason why I think it's one of my favorite and least favorite fights at the exact same time, and it's super annoying, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This fight has a hard while you're progressing, okay? Obviously now we can heal through it, but while you're progressing, that fight has a hard pass fail mechanic of not popping the correct egg at the correct time. And the reason why that annoys me so much is that you can't choose who gets to pop the eggs. And so what we were seeing is that if I had certain raiders get the egg mechanic, I would just call a wipe immediately because we just weren't able to pop the correct eggs at the correct time. And so for a mechanic that during progression was so punishing that it was literally pass fail, I didn't like that it was just fully random.
A part of it is people not talking to each other too.
But that's not but if anything that kind of goes back to what Zos was saying with which is that theoretically heroic bosses should be should be able to be overcome without comms, without talking to each other.
I agree.
But there's no way to just inherently assume that every single
Mm.
person in your raid knows exactly which egg to pop next. And there aren't enough world markers for you to be able to mark every single egg. And it's unrealistic to expect that you have somebody stop doing what they're doing to move raid markers mid pull.
So, my job was to stop doing what I was doing and move raid markers the entire fight.
So I think that that is
It was horrible.
unrealistic
It
to
was horrible.
expect.
No, it was terrible. I wish we had not started down that path. I wish we had taken longer to kill it and done it a different way, but it got us through the fight super quickly.
I raided with a different raid team, an indeterminate amount of time ago, who the person that did their call outs did not do any DPS at all that entire fight. And their entire job was to move raid markers. And I just thought that that was so unsustainable and unrealistic and unfun. And so the answer, which we saw in the like mythic progression, like the race to world first, the answer is a weak aura. It just is, right? And my problem with that is that Blizzard has tried so hard these past few years with their UI overhaul and their in-game notification system. Blizzard's done a really good job of making it so that these external add-ons aren't necessary. They're helpful, but they aren't necessary. I uninstalled every single one of my UI element add-ons, and I am down now to just the Blizzard default UI. But it's come so far that I feel like I actually haven't lost anything. Like my UI has not gotten any worse, even though I uninstalled all these add-ons. And so what ends up happening is that you have teams that require weak auras who are able to do that fight very easily because the mechanic will come out, something massive on your screen will say run to this marker, you will run to that marker, and then that's it. That's just the way it works, right? And the teams that don't require weak auras, like mine, don't have that same luxury. Now, obviously, that's by choice. I could require weak auras, right? But just as a principle, I choose not to. And so I feel like an external add-on or an external tool should not be required to make the progression of a boss fight not miserable. And so I just hate the fact that this fight essentially, obviously not, but requires weak auras, right?
What's wild? One of our slower progressing teams does it the way I wish I had on Acheron, and they put one raid marker in each set and require the group to know you're going to kill this T shape, you're going to kill this box, you're going
That's
to
how
kill
we do
this
it.
line. But it's just
That's how we
one
do
raid
it.
mark. Do the ones at X, do the ones at blue, do the ones at yellow.
Yeah, that's how
Instead
Harbinger
of
does it.
yeah, and that's the way it should be. It was quick for us to manually target everyone, and I changed my UI a little bit, so I have 2 rows of world markers, so I could preset 2 of them and then would move the third. So I was always working one ahead. Um, I
Well, we
mean,
also have a map.
I'm the only one who did anything interesting on that fight, though. Boring. Once you do the mechanic once, okay, you've done the whole fight. Now, you know, replicate this, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times because you don't really need the last set. So,
I definitely agree that you beat that fight before you pull it, right? If you have the strategy down, then the
yeah.
boss falls over. I do agree with that. But I also just really like the fact that, okay, this time I've got 2 worms up, so I need to be
Mhm.
mindful of my interrupts. Or this time I've got 2 sets of small ads, so I'm going to grip them all in and try and stun them. Or this time I've got, you know, 1 worm and 3 spiders, so I will put a defensive on my tank or like I liked the fact that that not every single egg was the same. I did like that.
I did, yeah. And I
I just
do like that you can control what's up, right? Like you said, your tanks are just clutch. So yeah, let's bring all the spiders at once. Um, Unfortunately, the downside then is at some point you're going to have like 3, 3 worms, and so it comes down to how good are your interrupters. And I like that. I think it rewards your raid group for being your raid group and
Do we ever
adapting
have
to
3
the fight.
worms?
Yep.
We we have only ever had 2, but you can
Uh,
definitely in the quadrant that we do second, it's very possible to get 3
Mhm.
worms up at the same time. Yeah,
I was gonna
I'll
say, I don't
do worm
remember us
second.
ever doing 3 worms at a
you
time.
can. So you know how the first. So we're in quadrant number 2, and that first pop we only do 3 eggs instead of 4.
Yeah, you've got the
If
worm all the way in the back.
if we were to pop 4, it would be another worm. So you
Yeah,
can
I
have
mean
3 worms up at the same time. You can
mhm.
have 3. We oftentimes have 3 big spiders up at the same time. I mean, we like I love I don't want to be confrontational, but I will disagree. I don't think the fight is boring. I love that there's an element of choice and coordination, and I just love the fight. I do. I really love the fight, but just something about, oh, we missed an egg, guess we wipe, is just
That
so
I don't like.
infuriating.
I want it to be punishing. I don't want it to be a raid wipe. I don't like when raid wipes are dependent on individual people at the heroic level.
I agree, 100%. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Like I said, I had a lot of
I
opinions. I
love
know
it.
I've
It
been
was
talking a
great.
lot, but like, I really do have a lot of opinions about that fight. And I was talking to my wife about this last night too, and we both kind of agreed that like this fight's actually really, really cool, but you mess one thing up and you wipe and you have to start all over, and it's just a slog. And so I wish that you could either control who pops the eggs, or I wish that it was less punishing for missing an egg. Like maybe
Yep.
instead of the goo slowly creeping outwards, maybe it was on a timer and you
Yep.
have X amount of time to clear all 10 eggs or 9 eggs or how many there are. And if you don't, then you wipe, right? Because then if my first egg popper misses an egg, my second egg popper has time to recover, right? It's kind of like the Sickran thing, right? Oh, I got an extra ad. Let me try and like adapt and overcome that and recover. But no, in Brood Twister, it's I missed I missed an egg. Guess we wipe.
Yeah. That's the frustrating bit. And I think it's unfair for players too because everyone can see, and we changed boss positioning to kind of prevent some of this from happening. Um where, someone needs to pick up a thing and they don't see where to go to, so they wipe the raid and everyone sees and everyone's yelling and like it's a bad experience for the player from a very simple easy mechanic you could say, but you can easily miss it if a bunch of people are standing on somewhere you need to go. um
If the boss is
and
covering
so
an egg, if
yeah,
the boss is
exactly.
Two
entirely too
people run,
large.
two people run to the same egg, and
Mhm.
then both people try and accommodate for that, and so suddenly you miss that egg entirely. That's happened to us before. If anything,
Yep.
some of my raiders are too selfless. Like I almost wish one of my
Mhm.
raiders was like, "No, fuck you, this is mine." Right? But no, it's just we have this, two people run to the same egg, they'll both realize what's happening, they'll both adjust, and now that egg gets missed. And now it's a wipe. And in that situation, whose fault is it? I know you don't always have to place blame, but like whose fault is it? Is it the person that's trying to actually do the mechanic correctly? I mean, I just wish that missing an egg didn't wipe you. And now it doesn't, because if you miss an egg, you can heal through it because we're overgeared and we've killed it 15 times. But during progression, if we missed an egg, it was a wipe and it was the worst feeling in the world.
I don't know what you're talking about. If someone lands on an egg that I done said I'm staying, I'm staying. I ain't
Yeah, but
moving.
that's you, right? That's not everyone. I would argue most people in our team would try and over accommodate or overreact, especially 10 wipes in. When you can see the 11th wipe happen. I mean, it's like Zoss said. No one's having fun. The person who missed it isn't having fun. The people that just died because that person missed it isn't having fun. Like I know wipes aren't inherently fun. Failure isn't fun, but I feel like every failure should be an opportunity to learn something. And when the failure is, well, Kaz missed another egg, let's reset and try again, right? And then what do you do? How do you react to that?
Yeah. That's what I would call the binary pass-fail mechanic,
Mhm.
which I hate for that exact reason, because it's not fun.
Well, and I prefer like we have some just stellar healers on the team. And not even just healers, just a lot of our people. And so when you have a mechanic like that that fails and goes bad, I, when you have the opportunity to either wipe or an opportunity for someone to be a hero, I, I think that's just a lot better. Um, so a failure has occurred, sure, but then there's the choice to continue to fail or someone gets to be a rock star. Like that's just a better experience for everybody.
I
Yeah.
agree. And so I think that if I were to change anything about that boss, it would be that have a set timer, and after that timer, an entire third of the room gets covered. And if any eggs are alive, then you wipe. But that way, if someone misses an egg in group one, group two has a chance to be a hero. If someone misses an egg in group two, group three has a chance to be a hero. If someone misses an egg in group three, I mean, I guess at that point you just wipe, right? Which I don't know. I agree. Give people an opportunity to succeed instead of forcing
Mhm.
them to fail.
Or
We
or
see that
hear
in the
me out.
second boss. Go ahead though.
Hear me out. Put something on the ground so people can go pick up a debuff to pop the eggs, and you can
It-
pick the people that pop the eggs.
right, but that would yes, absolutely. But I'm trying to build a world in which what Zos said is relevant also, which is giving someone a chance to be a hero. And we see it on the third boss too, right?
Mhm.
Oh, I know I'm repeating myself, but you get an extra ad you didn't mean to have. So the person with decimate aims their decimate a little differently, picks up that extra ad, and suddenly you didn't wipe. Now the person with that decimate debuff feels like a hero and gets the praise, and everyone's happy for them, instead of the person that spawned the extra ad getting criticized and ridiculed.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. I'm sorry. We can move on. I
I
love that
really
fight and I
didn't
hate that fight
expect
so much.
this to be where we got into like high level philosophy of
Really?
player
Uh,
Of
happiness and
of all the fights, this is the one for
I
all of
just
those reasons.
I'm very I don't know. I'm sorry. I just really
Yeah.
like this fight, but it's just it has one thing wrong with it that it's just wrong. It's so wrong.
it
Okay. All
annoys
right.
I
him.
My bad.
I know when we progged it
love it.
on heroic, we toyed around with, can we just put markers on all the eggs? And everybody said the same thing Zoe said. No, that's boring. I don't want to do it. It's complicated. Why? No. So we ended up with the doing the one marker around the set, and
Mhm.
then we're able to place it for every egg break.
Yep.
So then we just said we're gonna go square X skull, and then we're gonna go over here and we're gonna do star circle triangle, and then blah blah. But people were still kind of like, well, is this part of this first group or the second group? And it became a bit of a meme, but it actually works really well. We started calling it croissant toast baguette, and it's because the eggs are in that shape, the ones that we want. And I actually went into the speed run recently and brought that up. They're like, that makes so much sense. That
I
works
mean,
so well.
we do things like what like curve, triangle, line. I mean, we like
Um,
square. I don't know.
That's why it's
Your theme is
croissant toast
impressive though.
baguette.
I do appreciate the theme.
Yes. I mean, it's breakfast. A
breakfast is
healthy
awesome.
breakfast, but breakfast.
Breakfast is awesome.
Oh
Really
man, so
amazing.
yeah. And for what it's worth, all of those complaints that you have about this fight, taking it away from being the best fight, they just doubled down on for Mythic, and it's worse.
I feel like for Mythic though, it
It's so much of a different thing, and
I know, but I feel like for
it's a
Mythic
different goal.
you're expected to have those kinds of like
Absolutely,
extra tools. Like
absolutely.
I stand by what I say, which is that you shouldn't be required to have weak auras, but I do think weak auras make that at least that specific part of the fight significantly easier. I know that that fight on Mythic has its whole other set of challenges, but
Oh
for the
yeah.
one specific gripe I have with that fight, I would imagine on Mythic everyone has a weak aura and everyone just that's the
Yep.
end of that.
Yeah, and we do have people specifically dropping world markers for every egg, so everybody knows exactly where to go for everything, and they hate it. They hate it,
Yeah.
and I don't blame them for that because I would hate it too.
Yes, I don't know how you do it. I straight up refuse.
It got us through the fight quickly, and that was kind of the goal. For us, it wasn't about doing it right. It wasn't about improving as a raider and like all that kind of stuff. It was get through the fight, and it made more tactical sense to sacrifice most of the DPS of one person, and no one else had to think about it. Um, so it basically turned it into a patchwork fight for 19 people, whereas one person's running around like mad trying to mark everything, and they have a terrible experience, but everyone else actually has a really good time.
What the? Bro, shaking up on your brother. Let me.
Well, so on that, let's go into Kaiveza, where everybody has a good time.
Yeah, this fight's amazing.
It's so well done.
This fight's so good.
It is so good.
There's a couple
I
things
love
I
it.
wish were a little better, but I love most everything about this fight. I think it's just phenomenal.
Well, I like immediately, just to piggyback off of what I was just saying before, if you fail on this fight, you have plenty of opportunities to recover. We've had people accidentally shoot debuffs through the entire melee group, and they get really mad and they like start yelling, but at least they can spread out, survive, and keep going, you know? I think the portal mechanic is really, really well thought out. The fact that if your portals are placed well enough, you actually don't get pulled at all. Like,
Mhm.
no, I don't think any other fight has ever had a mechanic where if you do it perfectly, you can straight up ignore it. No, I'm sure that's not true, but you can literally ignore the portals because they don't pull you because of the way that math works. And it's just so much fun.
I wish there was a better way to know like the charge distance other than experience. So you do it enough times, you know how far they're going to go.
When they go past you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you could set the secondary portals a little better. Just kind of basically rotate everything X amount of space or whatever. But
That is how
I
you do it on
do,
Mythic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mythic's another one of those, though, where
Well, it's how the fight's supposed to be done, and everything
yeah.
else is watered down.
Yeah.
But also, Mythic's another one of those things where a weak aura is going to tell you where to go, which
No,
I know there
no,
isn't anything inherently wrong with, but
there actually isn't one because
there
it's
isn't?
no, it's a
It's
private
a
aura.
private aura.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just have to look. The charge, it's telegraphed.
Mhm.
The charge line is red for your charge
Right, I
and
know
whatever. Yeah.
that.
So yeah, there's no weak aura telling you where to go.
Oh, okay, well, that's cool.
This is a
I
weak
kind
aura
of
free
like
fight, and I'm very happy for that.
just go, beside the one that's there, so they just, rotate,
Mhm.
and then you're still free. And tanks actually have something to do, which is, I think, always good when tanks can do something other than stand there.
Yeah, and do our
Um,
taunt swap.
yeah, and because it comes last and so much later, you get as a tank to fix the problems of the DPS, which
Yep.
is what tanks do so much, like spend so much time doing, that it's really fun for them to get to do a very visual thing to, other than just, oh, let's taunt swap on one, you know. Um, I just think it's just so well done. And then phase two is great. Um, you can overthink that and make it so miserable for yourself, or you
Yep.
can just relax, and it is the simplest mechanic in the world.
Yep. Just jump
Um,
a line, man. That's all you got.
you just
It's
step left and right. It's like, you're tapping your keyboard. It's so easy.
But at
Um,
the same time, it has the visual flair
mm,
that makes it feel epic. Like, you
yep.
feel like you're dodging these insane skill shots, and you feel like you're Faker from League of Legends, and you just feel like everything you're doing is super important when in reality you're just moving slightly back and forth. So I praise the fight for that, for feeling epic.
I
Yep.
think they did a great job of bringing the Farrak mechanic and the Frock imagery forward in a fairly safe fight, so more people get to experience that.
Yeah.
And hey, they're blue instead of red, so that was kind of neat.
Clearly superior somehow.
So I I think everything about it is a good fight. Like
It's a very well done fight. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I have a question.
Mhm.
We all agree it's a good fight, so I'm not going to try and dissuade anybody. But the Reaper mechanic, the you die at 10 instead of 0, relevant, impactful, meaningful, fluff. Does anybody? Do you guys have any opinions on it?
It's an
For
interesting
Mythic,
idea. So it basically just chunks everyone's health by 10%.
Right.
And it's false difficulty for that reason.
Do you find yourself? I guess there's no way to know.
I don't think we've ever lost anybody because they hit 10 that weren't going to die anyway from some
that was
ridiculous.
absolutely going to be my question.
Yeah.
we have
Do you think that it matters? Because I feel like the mechanics of that fight are.
I mean, maybe in
Sorry.
phase 2, like if you're playing poorly in phase 2, which is when Reaper's really going to be your thing. And it kind of limits one failure point you can have. But I think they could have just increased the damage of things a little bit. I I think it's neat, but I think it's wasted coding. Like I didn't feel it at all. Like there's no visual that you hit 10%, not 0. Like she doesn't come flying across the room with a giant uh scythe, and
that'd be cool though.
oh,
I
wouldn't it though?
agree.
But it's just a
It would be
it's a
cool.
non-mechanic.
So there's a fight from Cataclysm way back in the day that does this exact same thing, but the exact opposite. Do you guys remember? Was it Chromagus?
I think so, yeah.
Where he set everyone's health to 10%, and
Mhm.
anything higher than 10% was just ignored. It was immune. You were immune to healing above 10%,
Mhm.
more or less. I don't think that's exactly how the mechanic worked, but
I mean, I like things that give healers something to do other than keep the bar at full. If you have to keep it between 10 and 90, or if you need to keep it between, two bands where you can't just bomb heal people. I think that's more interesting.
I
So
agree.
I have a problem with the mechanic purely because I know from experience, don't ask, that stagger can't kill me. But it puts
Okay.
me at 1 health.
Mhm.
And how do you know that, Jazzy?
I said I'm not taking questions. Uh, so the Reaper mechanic has killed me at least once.
Mhm.
In a situation where I was 1 global away from not being at 10% on my own accord, and I am not a healer. Now,
Okay, so
should I have
that's
gotten to that point? That's a different question, but
But
yeah.
that's interesting, right? And that's kind of why I posed the question in the first place is, in phase 1, everything just one-shots you anyway. So I guess phase 2, it does make sense. There's more just passive damage. But I never felt during any of our wipes or any of our kills or any of the time we spent progressing, I never felt like I wasn't. I never thought to myself, like, oh, Reaper just killed me. I should have lived that,
I
It's always.
forgot it was a mechanic until I prepped for this chat tonight.
I remembered it was a mechanic when I healed on my priest because I was paranoid about letting people get too low. But as a DPS, it didn't. I never cared about it. It was I'm either alive or I'm dead.
Yeah.
It's one of those that actually is a pure healer mechanic.
But the fight's great. I mean,
Yeah.
we all agree the fight's great.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. So well done. Like, and it's simple. There's nothing complicated about it.
No, it's a very simple, straightforward fight. I
and
think
I
that's
love
what
it.
makes it so great too. Is do
It's
these
easy to
3 things
understand,
and you're done.
easy to teach.
Yeah. On the complete
But
opposite
hard.
end of that spectrum, though, court.
Fights shouldn't take longer to explain than they take to do.
I
Full
remember
stop.
I remember prepping for this, and I wrote in our slides, "Mechanic vomit."
Mechanic vomit. I mean,
So we touched a
Huh?
little bit about this earlier, but I think that there are some overlaps, maybe some mechanical overlaps that I guess that's the challenge, but at the same time feel a little unnecessary.
Yeah.
The one that comes to mind is that you have the pull-in, and we talked about it earlier, so we don't need to go too much into it, but you have the pull-in, some people have to break, you have to determine who's supposed to break, those people have to get into the correct position, you're taking 1,000,000,000,000 ticking damage, and then right as soon as the charge goes out, he also an impale ring pops. And I think that specifically that impale ring is unnecessary. Like there's already enough going on and you already have to position yourself correctly and you already have to try and keep these line players alive. And then all of a sudden you're also dodging an impale ring. And heaven forbid the impale ring spawn anywhere near the charge. Like that's probably my biggest gripe that we haven't already touched on is that impale ring doesn't need to exist.
I agree.
I would also agree. Impale rings
Because
should not
why?
exist.
I think in phase 1, like I don't know, you only have to deal with each mechanic twice,
Yeah.
which isn't, terrible, but I also like that you can control who gets webbed in phase 1, right? To go back to my Brood Twister high horse, like the random webbing is in phase 3 is a lot more annoying than the controlled one in phase 1. Like let me control it. Let me get
So
my best raiders to do the job.
from my mythic stuff, I think it is controllable.
In phase 3?
In phase 3, because specifically in mythic, it is controllable for sure.
Well,
In
because you
phase
can't have 2
3,
people with the same affinity pulled together or something, right?
No, it's you're web linked to the person closest to you. So when we get
I
there
believe
in
that is correct.
Mythic, we have very specific pairs of people on one of the groups that are not breaking because they're going to fix the charge problem. Then and we have hard assigned spots for those people to not break. Everybody
Huh,
else,
I didn't know
blue
that.
team, you can break. Don't care.
Oh, we'll have to try. We'll have
But
to
it
try
pulls you
that.
into one spot.
It does at separate. Well, it's the closest person at the start of the pull.
Oh,
Yeah.
that I was okay. Oh, I like this.
So yeah.
I'm gonna play and
So our
explore this.
DPS currently is high enough that we only have to do that charge once
Yep.
in phase 3.
We're at the point we have so we have not killed the fight doing that mechanic successfully. We brute force this with cooldowns and healing and pots and everything else, and just push right on through, and then kill the buff.
That's fair. I can respect that.
If it works,
Uh,
it works.
Yeah, it's ugly, but it works.
So maybe that's honestly though, I don't know. It's so funny. We've been talking about these pass fail mechanics all night, but if the answer to the craziest mechanic is to brute force it, maybe the charge should kill you.
I mean, we've
I know it
never finished it with
mostly
everyone
does.
alive either. I mean, there is a punishment aspect. It's
Yeah.
I
just
think
not my
the I
favorite.
think the I think the
Go ahead.
bosses have too much health.
Yeah, that
I
fight
think
goes on
that
for.
fight outlives its welcome.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
Well,
you hero
the shield has too much health.
that.
Yeah.
But you hero. I don't know how it is in Mythic. On Heroic, you hero on pull because that's the just highest raw damage output is to hero on pull.
Mhm.
So you hero on pull, and then you're just trying to do more damage in phase 1 so that you have to do less damage in phase 3. I almost wish that the phases were health based instead of time based, and that the boss had like 20% less health.
There
Like,
is a safety percentage, but yeah.
make me
Yeah.
do the mechanics. That's fine. Like, force me to do the mechanics, sure, but also like, don't make me do them for 9 minutes straight. I think our kill. I don't know if the boss has a hardened rage. I could be talking on my butt, but I'm pretty
It
sure our
does.
kill was 11.5 minutes.
That's a soft rage, but yeah.
Let me see what ours was. I don't, from a tanking standpoint, because again, I've actually tanked that boss more than I've DPS'd it. I don't like that. Essentially the tall boss is ignored from
I
a
agree.
tanking standpoint. You
That's
just drag your tank swapping the other one.
You should tank swap both of them.
On heroic, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree.
So I mean, yes, you should, but the mechanic is completely irrelevant. So
No, what I mean, like that should be the design of it. Is
oh,
you
oh, oh, I
swap
thought
both
you were
of
meaning
them.
like you should be
No,
doing that. I'm like,
no,
why?
we
It doesn't hurt.
absolutely, as far as tanks go, one of them picks up Sigran to start, and that's
Oh,
it. Like
absolutely.
that's yeah, and they get dispelled every now and then because that's the tank mechanic from Sigran. Like Sigran might as well not exist from our point of view,
Yeah. And the
which is bad.
the cleanse mechanic, I like cleanse mechanics. I think this is a neat way to do it. It's very Lich King, right? Like you're dispelling a thing onto a specific thing. But it's so frantic that you lose some of that bonus damage time because people are afraid of being too close, so they're too far. Um, it, it wasn't super exciting for me.
I
Um,
personally I personally don't have any problems with the dispel mechanic. I think it's probably the easiest of them, like in my opinion, because like well, the way that we handled it is we never dispelled early. We waited for the boss to jump to the middle, and then we had everybody clear the middle except the people with the debuff, and then we just dispelled all 3 at the same time. And we personally never had an issue with it.
Yeah, mass there would be amazing. I mean, it wasn't bad for us. We had one wipe, I think, that was caused by not clearing in time. So I went and looked. We did it in about 8.5. So we got to ignore a lot of mechanics there.
Like your very first kill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 8:35, I believe.
I'm trying to look ours up.
Unless we killed it 1 week earlier than I thought. I'm gonna click because this is great radio for yeah, 8:35.
I mean, even at 8.5 minutes, it's still a long time.
It's way too long for a penultimate fight. It just, and again, the shield, I like the shield mechanic, like, push through this phase by breaking the shield and continuing the fight. Okay, at least we're doing something. The boss is immune, I guess, but you're still DPSing something, so that's cool.
So our first
It just takes
kill,
too long.
I'm so sorry. I'm just jumping in. Our first
Sure,
kill
please.
was 9 minutes and 44 seconds.
Okay.
That's so long.
Yeah. It's just too long.
Yeah, it's a
I
very
will
long.
say that these bosses have been really easy. They're not easy to hard reset. But with, if people will die quickly enough and you can get a shadow meld off or a feign, I think we saved a lot of run back time this expansion. Certainly in the fun runs, by the bosses being easy to reset. Hyde, who runs Vanier and is on Acheron, is a master at resetting bosses at the end of the fight. So we saved a lot of time by not running back.
Real quick, back to Kaiveza. She resets at the stairs. Can we just thank you, Blizz?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Thank you. That's an amazing
wonderful.
thing. Do that more.
We rely on soul stones and Ankh.
Yeah, I'll burn onks to prevent a run back.
Oh.
I don't care.
That
That's when
hurts my
you
soul.
know when like in my raid when I'm getting tired of our wipes and I'm starting to get a bit frustrated with the raid, then I start burning onks
Somebody just Ankh.
to fight. Yeah, just onk, let's go. Like
I
I'm
don't care
just
who, just Ankh.
like get me in the fight again. Let's do this again. That is the point when I start start being less chill is when I start having shamans burn onks instead of running back.
Yep, I agree. And the worst part
Yeah,
is
I
that
like
I'm the warlock, so I'm the one
Mm.
that's supposed to be soul stoning. But I feel like in between pulls, I have so much other stuff going on that I'll forget to throw out a soul stone, and
You
then
can
I'll get
jump Lock Rock.
frustrated that I forgot to throw out a soul stone,
How
and then
dare you,
I'll just
Kaz?
be like, screw it, just onk.
How dare you,
Don't
Kaz?
forget the gateway.
And the
So to go
cookies.
Do you,
back
have a, do, you
to
have a, do you have a pet? Can I get a summon?
court, I just looked, and our fastest kill is 7 minutes even, and so
nice.
I think to just kind of like double down on the I wish it was health based and not time based. Like we skipped 2 full minutes worth of mechanics.
Yeah.
So that's like I respect that fights get easier the more gear you have. I do like that. But I don't know. I just wish that like I feel like the ending of that fight can get a little crazy, and so I don't know. It just feels weird to me that you're able to skip so much of it.
I'll come back to that on Queen for sure.
No.
Well, we can talk about
Hey.
Queen. We haven't killed. I haven't killed it. The Harbinger has not killed it, but we've spent a lot of time progressing, so I definitely have opinions.
Well, it's the fact that we haven't had to do the ascendant ads in phase 3. We just kill the fight before it happens.
Yeah.
And that feels dirty because that's the hard part of phase 3. Avoiding avoiding a soft enrage is one thing. But I mean, we shaved off a crazy amount of that fight on our progression kill. And that feels weird. The
I
fight, the difficulty
agree.
so front loaded, which I'm fine with. So for us, you know, we spent. Let me pull up our numbers here because numbers are fun. You know, we pulled Brood Twister 10 times. We pulled Court 5, and then we pulled Queen 83. That's a crazy difference. And
Talk about hockey stick graph. Jeez.
right, and it feels like we spent so much time learning how to jump in phase 1 and do the little boop. And then people having to learn how far the draw in is in the first transition phase, and oh look, another draw mechanic that we're going to do twice more, three more times in that fight. So it feels repetitive, which is funny that I'm trashing this fight that I said is like my favorite fight in there, but it's a good fight. It's a long fight. I like it, but it could have been a little better, a little without much work.
I would say our biggest headache so far is the liquefy. I don't know why. I don't know how. But every time liquefy goes out, someone dies because they didn't move out of the
Yeah.
circles. And I know that the way that you're supposed to do it is that you all stack up and just move as a group. But like we talked about earlier, stacking is like the bane of all of these teams, and my team included. And I worry that we stack up a little too good. All of the liquefies go out at the same place. Somebody doesn't react fast enough, gets hit by everyone else's liquefy and dies. And Queen isn't the fight where one death will wipe you anymore since they've changed it, right? But it's very demoralizing knowing that you still have 8 minutes left to go and you're already down 2 people, 3 people.
Yep. Because then you
And
really don't have the DPS upstairs to skip. So there is a punishment effect for being dead early.
I would say that for the most part, we have our jumping down. We have a pretty good system for handling that. I would just say that I've got people dying to liquefy. I've got people getting webbed and then not being broken out, and then complaining that they're not being broken out. And you look and they're 25 feet behind the raid, complaining that none
Yeah.
of the melee came to save them. And I don't know. It's just that fight. I don't dislike it, but I don't know how many pulls in we are. I could take the time to count. I don't really want to, but we're at least 50 pulls in, and we're not consistently hitting the transition. And then once and then we're not consistently hitting phase 2, and we're definitely not consistently hitting phase 3. And it just gets to the point where it's maybe a little discouraging that so much of the difficulty of that fight is front loaded, because it feels like we're not actually progressing.
Oh, I see.
I disagree with fights being front loaded. I think they should get harder over time. And that feeds into the feeling of progression. It also thematically fits with bosses getting more and more desperate to not die.
Yeah, it's like the
And
Dragon Ball Z
yeah,
thing. Frieza didn't start in his final form. Cell didn't
right.
start with all of the androids in his butt. Like it's true, you power up. Goku
Mhm.
didn't start at Mastered Ultra Instinct. Like you don't do everything right off the bat. And my we've spent what number of wipes aside, just looking at time, because as a heroic team once a week, time is our enemy, right? And
Absolutely.
from a time standpoint, we spent about 3 hours wiping in phase 1.
Yeah.
And it's like I want to practice phase 2, but I can't because I just keep wiping in phase 1. And I feel like some of these end bosses lately have been a relatively tame phase 1, so that phase 2 and phase 3 can go crazy. Like I think of Sarkareth. I don't know
Mhm.
if people generally liked that fight or not. I very much liked that fight. The beginning was not easy, but it was short, it was manageable. You had a hard transition at, 60 whatever percent, and it was, I don't know, I just felt like that fight was good in the sense that, okay, we got through phase 1, perfect. Now let's work on phase 2, right?
Mhm.
Whereas for Queen, it's like, okay, we got through phase 1, let's work on phase 2. Oh, we wiped. All right, let's spend another hour on phase 1.
That's it. And it's the Zoval problem, right? Like it was the same thing in Sepulcher. Phase 1 was just so hard.
Yeah. Oh my god,
Um,
don't get me started on dropping into holes. Good. Yeah.
but it's
Sorry. PTSD.
the fight does get easier, which is a weird feeling. Um, I think on a long fight like that, sometimes it's nice to know that like okay, you can relax a little. Okay, you can relax a little more. The transition phases and like doing the platforms upstairs, super mindless. So it lets you rest mentally a little bit before you go into phase 3, which is nice in a long fight. Of course, you might argue that okay, if you need time to relax in a fight, the fight's too long.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I don't mind end bosses being long though. Like I think that they could, I don't know. I don't know enough about the fight. We haven't killed it. I don't want to give like hard suggestions, but if phase 1 was a little easier and phase 3 was a little harder, then at least we would have this sense of progression, the sense of accomplishment, the sense of forward motion. But as it
yeah,
stands right now, we've spent 3+ hours over the course of 2 weeks, right? We've been progressing on Queen for about 2 weeks now, and we've spent about 3-ish hours on the fight, and we're still not out of phase 1. And we've made it to phase 2, we've made it to phase 3, but then we'll just spend another, 15, 20, 30 minutes on phase 1. And I wish that phase 1 was a little easier. not because maybe because I'm bad. That's fine, but I don't know. I just wish phase 1 was easier so that there was a better sense of progression. There was a better progression curve. Because right now it just feels like, oh well, let's just keep wiping in phase 1 then.
It's funny that you mentioned the root mechanic before, because as a gnome monk, that root mechanic doesn't exist for me.
Yeah, no, I know, and
It's
I've got
great.
I've got dragons and I've got druids and I've got paladins. Like I get it, right? It
It's
also
so
says
good.
a lot. I don't know what Blizzard was thinking. Maybe they thought that it was just the best mechanic that they've ever designed, but literally one raid tier ago, they used this exact same mechanic. I mean, to a T. Like it does the exact same thing. I mean, to the point that when we're calling it out in comms, we just call it Tindril. We don't call it webs. We don't call it roots. We call it Tindril. We say Tindril, and everyone knows what to do. Like they,
Yeah.
I don't know. Such like I know that they reuse mechanics, and I know that there are only so many mechanics in the world, but to have your penultimate boss have everyone root each other, but you kind of have to spread out a little bit, and then you have to break each other out of your roots, or you can find a way to immune the root. And then one tier later, the final boss makes everyone stack up to because you're going to get rooted, but you kind of have to spread out a little bit, or you'll kill each other. And then if you can break out of your root, you do. Like, it's so blatant to me that like maybe they could have done something a little different.
It's the same thing with Princess and uh, gosh, I just lost the boss's name. I said it
Sigrid?
just a minute ago. Um, last
Zoval?
boss of Amir Jazil.
Oh, Fyrak.
For yeah, exact same mechanic on Princess. Now it's not lethal and it's blue instead of red, but it's the exact same mechanic. And like you say, it was repeated the next tier.
Yeah, it's there are only so many mechanics, but it's a little early for that one, especially
Mhm.
because Tindril.
But
If I could say that
I-
with more disgust, I would.
and I think the difference for me is the mechanics are one is just inherently more fun than the other one.
Yeah.
Like doing it on Princess, the Farak line mechanic is a lot more engaging than break everybody out of roots that you can mostly overlap, but not totally. So loose spread, but tight, and just AoE them down. And if you can shift, stand off to the side, DPS everybody else out, then shift yourself out. Like it's not engaging. It doesn't. It's another way to force stack spread, but I
It's not a
feel like
fun
we've
one.
done that so much this tier.
I think my problem with it is that it's so specific. Like copying over the line mechanic,
Mhm.
you could argue that you need some form of damage. Like something's got to kill you, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
like
for sure.
there's so many ways that they can overlap these mechanics, and you have all these mechanics. I don't know. I just feel like the webs, the tendril, the however you want to like whatever you use to refer to it is so specifically the exact same mechanic.
Mhm.
The good news, they don't spawn ads.
That is true.
It's not not great consolation.
That is true.
Oh
Um,
man. I
but
uh I
I
do
enjoyed
like,
Queen.
yeah, one thing I think they did really well with the P1 and the knockup portion is the hang time. That is extremely forgiving, and that's a
Yeah,
good thing.
I also like no, I like that part. I love the knock up. I think it's a very interesting. I think it's a really interesting mechanic that you're using one of the boss's mechanics to avoid another of the boss's mechanics. It's the Sikron thing all over again, right? You're using the
yep,
decimate to clear the charges, and
I
you're
like that.
creating your own room. You're running out of space on your own terms. Like I love the jump mechanic. I don't necessarily mind phase 1 of Queen. I just think that it creates a counterproductive rating progression rating environment to know that once we're out of phase 1, we're not out of phase 1.
That's it. That's the problem.
I think every other boss has had, or at least this tier, right, has felt like, okay, we're done with phase 1, let's move on to phase 2, and I just don't think Queen has that.
Phase 2 just has spiders that are impossible to constantly pick up because they're spread out too much and don't spawn at the same time, and your DPS don't know how to target the right thing. That may be specific to me.
No, I think that's a pretty general experience of all tanks on that fight. Because I know when I tank it, I have that feeling like, oh, come on, let me get a couple globals. Like, geez. And when I'm DPSing it, there are Moonfire, Sunfire, and Starfall falling like a champion. Like, come on, tank, pick it up.
The
So,
spiders spawn and there's a keg mid-air. Demon Hunter's already there blowing everything. I'm like,
yeah.
no! They're not even your target to kill! What are you doing?
Yeah, I've just started
Yeah.
ignoring the spiders.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Well, I just understand that as a Havoc Cleave Destruction Warlock, my job is to get to the platform and kill the thing with the shield as fast as possible. I'll let my Ret Paladins and Elemental Shamans deal with the small spiders. I just understand that that's not my job.
Can we also appreciate
Tempest is a thing.
that the ad with the shield has literally a singular health point, which means
Oh, I
that I
love
can
it.
throw Touch of Death instantly?
Yeah, I'm just constantly throwing out shadow burns that reset themselves because I've talented into shadow burn resets
Pew,
itself.
pew, pew.
Nice.
Hate you all.
Not sorry.
Sorry,
As
not
a ramp
sorry.
class, it is frustrating.
So I don't know enough about you. You can talk about phase 3, Zos, if you want. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion. It seems hectic, but not terrible. But I just my gripe with Queen is the stuff I've seen, and the stuff I've seen is phase 1.
Phase 3 cost us a week. We got to it on the last pull of the night, and then people were unprepared to drop the portals, and so we had to come back the next week and kill it, which is fine. Because we don't. That's the other thing about Acheron. Generally, people don't do a lot of prep, so until they see the mechanic, then they don't know the mechanic. But then they see it once, come back and do it. It just so happened that happened across a raid night. So I like phase 3. I like that it feels harried. You boop across the platform, she's hanging there, you have a good hard burn at the end of the fight, which always feels good. And then she drops down, you're like, okay, fight's on. And everyone has to be on the right side, the correct side immediately. Tanks have to react with the little ad drop correctly immediately. Typical WoW. Oh, there's ads. Stop what you're doing. Kill the ads, just to kind of stretch the fight out and test and train target priority. Like that's all dope. I enjoy that. But then when you start getting into the shackles and the dance around that and trying to find the magic spot to for the tank to drop the little ads so DPS go out, but they're not too far because they need to be able to get back for Shackle, and everyone needs to target swap at the same time for Shackle, and then get ready for the ads, which we didn't actually deal with on our prod kill. I just like it. There's a lot going on, but it's manageable. It's only chaotic if you let it be chaotic.
I like that.
It's a scripted dance, and there's no reason for it to be chaotic. If your players drop things where they're supposed to drop them, it's fine, and everything just flows. I mean, it's clear how it was built, but then it's a house of cards, and if something's put in the wrong spot, everything's going to come tumbling down. And I really like that. I just hate it takes so long to get back to phase 3. Sometimes I like the Final Fantasy model where you get to start halfway through a boss fight.
Oh man, if WoW could adopt gate, once you get through phase 1 and you die in phase 2, you just start in phase 2 again, please. Please.
That'd be such a
So-
dramatic
That
shift from
would
how
be-
WoW is
It would be.
currently
It would
designed.
Oh
be.
yeah.
right.
But oh god.
Really enjoy it. I just like the boss. I like the sounds of her death. I mean, it just
Mhm.
visually it's satisfying. Like it feels good to kill her.
It does. It doesn't feel
Um,
good to sit there while the cinematic loads as she's lying there on the floor and you can't loot her.
Right.
but
Oh,
I
I'm
just think they did a
dying.
great job with this tier and with that boss. It's
It's a
a
good
great way
fight.
to end the first tier.
It is.
I am sated. You know.
Well, that's
All
good.
right. So now that we've rambled on about the raid for 2 hours at this point,
Not enough.
Zos, what is your favorite Mythic Plus this tier?
Oh,
Switching gears entirely.
unprepared for that. I've spent most of my time in Grim Batol.
So you want the trinket.
I want the trinket. Still haven't got the trinket. There's things I like about all of them. And
So, favorite
admittedly, I
one.
have done a lot less Mythic Plus than the last several expansions. I have done almost none. I've had no 40 dungeon weeks this time. I'm only like 2400 IO as we speak. Like I have not been pushing. And gosh, it's
You
not
don't even know, do
Siege.
you?
I hate Siege of Borealis. It's so much better than it used to be. I just don't like
It's
it
still
for
bad.
I don't have so many reasons. I'm bored with Tyranna Scythe. I was bored with it in Shadowlands. I'm with it again. I'd rather do Necrotic Wake, honestly.
I'm the exact opposite.
I like Echoes. I've called them Echoes and Threads, all expansions. So Arakara or
I mean, that's what
Arakara,
they are.
whatever.
It's Echoes and Threads.
It's Eric Karen threads. But
Yeah,
wet.
I know, and I get it. So I like both of those. I like some of the weird routing things. I don't know. I don't really have a favorite. There's nothing I avoid, and there's nothing I get really excited about doing. Like Mythic Plus is very meh for me this season, and I hate that, but it is.
You said you're 2400. Do you have your portals? That sounds portal territory.
I have done one portal.
Okay.
I don't have the motivation, and
That's
I
great.
part of me, this is no lie. I think if I were to get my portals, well, I guess I've done 3 10s, but I had Tyranna Scythe already, so it doesn't
He's
count.
done 3 10s.
But like
Keep my mouth shut.
I'm afraid if I finish them off, I'm gonna quit playing because
Yeah,
I
no,
can
I'm
that's
respect
not
just
that.
not
that's not
engaged.
allowed. That's
That
not
was me
allowed.
last. That was me last tier. Once I got my last
Just
portal on my dragon, I just stopped playing my dragon.
yeah,
Yep.
I'm just not engaged this tier, and there's multiple reasons why. Some of it is game related, some of it is teammate related, and I'm not playing with a set group this tier or anything. And Mace, my healer on my team, that's like 29. No, I think he broke 3K. All in
Cheesy
pugs,
peasy.
Yeah, he's insane
pugged
though.
it all.
Cheesy peasy.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I had a really hard time from a tanking standpoint of the fear of failure was super high in me this time. Like I'm gonna screw these things up, and I had some really bad early experiences, and
Yeah.
it just made me really dodge doing Mythic Plus, so you don't get better, so that doesn't help. So I just, for whatever reason, it's not been my thing this expansion, and I hate it because I love Mythic Plus. I mean, raid is still the most important thing in the game to me, but because I do so much more Mythic Plus, I mean, I only raid 3 hours a week in progression. I spend more time pugging raids than I do with my team. It just isn't there this time. So, yeah.
What about you, Kaz? What's your
Well,
favorite Mythic Plus?
my favorite Mythic Plus is Grim Batol.
What's wrong with
Just
you
like
people?
that's just not even like I liked that dungeon back when it was current, and I like it just as much now. I like the changes that they made to it. I think it's very approachable. I like the final boss with the like safety mechanic, and I don't know. I know it's difficult. I mean, the obvious answer is haha missed. I can time it, but like I like Rimbatul a lot.
I like Mist because I'm a Night Fae at heart, and I love that zone so
Oh, I did
much.
Night Fae all through Shadowlands
Yeah,
also.
it's
I agree with you. The dungeon's fantastic, but
yeah,
this is like the third time we've had it in
played out a lot. Yeah.
rotation, and
Yep.
I don't know. I like that they're exploring older dungeons. I really want them to have like to throw like a Wrath or a
Shadowlands.
Burning Crusade
Or not,
dungeon into the rotation.
Shadow Labs.
Like if
Throw
I
Dire
want Shadow
Maul.
Labs back.
Oh
Just
my
pick one of the
God.
Dire Mauls and just tell everybody to go have fun.
I want Shadow Labs back. I don't know why. I want Shadow Labs back.
That's so linear.
I like Shadow Labs. I don't know why, but I like Shadow Labs.
But I think that it's
Ah,
fun that they're starting to experiment with older dungeons again. You know,
Mhm.
we got Vortex Pinnacle, that was a Cataclysm dungeon.
Mhm.
Grimbatol, that's a Cataclysm dungeon. I think that they can start experimenting with the Lich
Burning
King
Burning
and
Crusade and
Burning
Vanilla.
Crusade dungeons. You know, I think that yeah, I think that they should be less afraid to revamp older dungeons.
Here's one for you. Mythic
no-
Plus Dead Mines.
oh
No,
God,
that dungeon's too long.
you know that they're gonna try
It's
They're
too
at
gonna
some
try.
long.
point.
They're gonna try. But speaking of keys, we have a stream-a-thon coming up.
You don't
We
say. This is the first I'm
do.
hearing of it.
December 7th, and to benefit Child's Play. We've done that charity in the past, but yeah, it's coming.
So that's what's made me really excited about Mythic Plus on the back half of the season, because the streamathon is incredible. Going back to Lilycat, who is no longer with us, and Sin, who put together the first one, all the way through, and all the people who have run uh, the streamathon, whether they were the host and did put the event on, or all the people who ran keys or donated. This is just an incredible thing that I get super, super excited about, because it's gamers coming together to help other people, and I just can't hate on that.
Best time of the year.
It
And we
really
do it
is.
twice a year.
Yeah. So it's best times of the year. I'm sorry, I'll see myself out.
It's all good. But anywho, so if you're looking to sign up a team and you're in guild, be on the lookouts for sign up soon. The donation link will be open approximately a week out. Is that right, Sus?
Yes, donations will open a week before. Um, so that's the 30th of November. We should get the donation link out to everybody. And very shortly, we'll start being we'll open up the signups for the teams, and you can register your team. 4 people active at a time. Have as many people as you want on your team. Rotate people through. If you can only do an hour, hey, that's great. You don't have to be here for all 12 hours. If you can, that is awesome too. And I just look forward to see if we can have the most teams we have ever had, and work to
Again,
raise just as much money as we can.
or more. We
Or
keep breaking
more?
those dang records constantly. Good
I
God,
think I
y'all are
think
pretty
we've
good
broke the record every
every single
single
time. Yeah,
streamathon. So let's break it again.
got a
We can
streak. Got to
we
keep
can
it going.
we can do
And
it.
I just have to say, I'm giving other folks a chance to do the most keys. Anytime my team is there, we do the most keys. So that is up for grabs again for someone, because I will
Challenge is
not be
set.
running a team. So I'm looking to see somebody else on top of the totem. Let's see if we can get a new highest key and a new most keys.
The
Ooh, highest
challenge is
key.
set.
Highest key, you say?
Mhm.
Don't give him ideas. Don't encourage him, Zos.
Hmm. In my key group that we keep running into, we have certain people that are terrified of a 12, and I just keep poking them because it's not that bad,
It gets
I mean,
real.
what's
It,
the worst that'll happen? You'll wipe a whole bunch.
it gets super real.
But
right?
Watching these other folks do it, I've not even attempted a 12. I failed some 11s, but I don't think I've tried a 12 yet.
I have almost all of them timed at 11, almost. But it's time to start doing 12s.
Well, aren't you fancy?
Yeah, I am. I'm amazing in all ways possible. You
I
should
actually
know this.
DPS some keys this tier, which is really weird for me.
That is weird.
But it's a great time. So if you're hearing this podcast and it is not the 7th of December, please put it on your calendar and get ready to come help us do a really great thing for a really cool charity.
We got this. Anywho, thank you guys both for coming. It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. And we will see y'all next time.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.